Hi guys, Peter here, and just got back from Startup Weekend Auckland, which was an amazing 3-day event. So basically Friday night, Saturday all day, and then Sunday all day. So pretty full on. I'm kind of exhausted, but just had a few things to kind of share, had a chance to reflect on the experience. So I was mentoring on the weekend, which was really exciting. So a cool thing to do, and my first time mentoring on a startup weekend in Auckland. So really interesting to see the format here in Auckland, how it differs to some of the things going on in New York, and then also in the scene over in London as well, because there's a slightly kind of Kiwi take on how we do Startup Weekend. And so it was really cool to get exposed to that. So that was really fun. So the first one would be that it's worth reading up on the lean canvas. So there's a business model canvas that's floating out there, and you can Google that, look for it. But there's an adaptation that is commonly used in hackathons and startup weekends called the lean canvas. It's a graph, it's a diagram, but it really functions as a checklist. So it's worth spending a little bit of time reading up about it and understanding it. Now, it's not going to be honest, it's not until you're in the room going through the process and you're actually forced to fill in a lean canvas for a project that you're working on, and then to go out and actually validate each of the boxes and really backfill them and explain them, that you're going to realize just how hard that tool is and how important and how awesome it is. So to be honest, read the blogs. They're actually not going to make a lot of difference, but it's nice if the weekend isn't the first time you're ever seeing a business model canvas or a lean canvas. So it's worth having a read up on that. So that's probably the first thing, but don't over rely on it. So second thing would be to realise that the Auckland Startup Weekend, a lot of the ones in New Zealand are not quite as focused on hardcore code and software development as some of the hackathons around the world. Now, to be fair, that's actually a global trend, because ultimately, you can sit down for a weekend, build a lot of code, you can get through a lot of stuff, particularly with a team of people, but it's actually not that useful if no one wants what you're making. And to be honest, that's the same in the real world. In the real world, you can sit down with a team of people, you can do a lot of stuff, you can build things, you can design them, but you can spend huge amounts of time on something before checking, does anyone actually want this thing? So actually a good startup weekend, and particularly the ones in Auckland, but I think throughout New Zealand, and to be honest, the really, really good startup weekends, so Lean Mean, Startup Machine, the Techstars ones, a lot of the startup weekends around the world are moving this way, that you're not going to be building code for the entire weekend. At some point during the process, you're going to get challenged to go out and actually talk to people. So it's very, very practical, but don't expect to spend the entire time at the venue. Expect to spend some time away from the venue, out in the world, talking to whoever is the customer or the audience or the group that's going to benefit from this, from new users. So expect to spend some time out in the world. So that means wear comfortable shoes, have clothing that you can go outside in as well, not just be stuck inside for the entire weekend, and have that mindset of, I'm going to use the Startup Weekend venue as the base and home base for the weekend, but I may actually be going around and moving to different places. So just have that in the back of your mind as well, as it's not just going to be spending the whole weekend sitting just in the building. At some point, someone's going to challenge you to get out of the building and to go and actually validate or talk to people. It's actually really interesting. There's a structure and a framework to it, so it's awesome, but it's worth knowing in advance. The other one would be, it's pretty intense. So on the weekend that I've just spent, I was there until 1 in the morning on Friday, and 1 in the morning on Saturday, and until midnight on Sunday. And you don't necessarily have to be there for that late. I was mentoring, so I was probably there with kind of full intensity the entire time. But actually, if you're participating and you're going through the process, you're going to want to be there and be in the game, because that's what it's for, is you're going to be working hard, you're going to be full on, you're going to be going for it. So I would say make sure you don't make other plans during the weekend. It's a full weekend commitment. It's as simple as that. The other thing too would be that you're going to be working in a team. So just take a deep breath and realize that all of the silly little things that come up when you work as a team in high school, all of the things about getting to know each other, who's cool, who isn't, who talks more, who doesn't, all of that stuff will come up during the process. And whoever you are in that environment, however you react to that, that'll come up as well. But I guess the the interesting thing would be everyone's there for the same reason and everyone's going through the same process. So you can actually it's nice to be aware of that, but you can kind of be chilled out about it because there's plenty of food breaks and lunch breaks and dinner breaks. There's plenty of chances to mix and mingle, so you're not just going to be stuck with your team. Although once you get into it, you're going to want to be focused and be with them. But you're not going to be stuck with any one person. You're going to get a chance to talk to lots of different people. And everyone that's there doesn't know anyone else. So it's actually a pretty safe place to kind of get to know people. If you haven't been along to an event like this before or haven't done anything in the startup scene before, then it's super welcoming, super friendly, because there are a lot of other people in the same situation as well. So be aware of the teamwork element, but again, just know about it and then shrug it off and be chilled about it, because actually it's going to be the same for everyone. And then the last one is kind of a personal thing. So some people come along on Friday night and they pitch an idea for Startup Weekend that they're somehow very attached to. So if it's actually your startup idea and you're thinking of doing a startup around this idea and you've done work like registered a domain or you've pitched it at other events and actually put time onto it, those sorts of things, then that's your IP and your idea, and it's actually probably not right for a startup weekend, because in the startup weekend you're going to swarm up with a whole group of people, you're going to work on something for a whole weekend and kind of build and validate and measure, and you're going to, at the end of it, you're going to pitch it and you're going to put it out into the audience and put it to the judges. And that process is pretty tough. It's not an easy process. You're trying to compress the entire experience of creating a startup into one weekend. And that level of intensity means that there's going to be a lot of scrutiny on that idea. The trick would be find an idea that is in the same space as what you're thinking of doing. So it either has the same customers, the same audience, it has the same general themes, because then you're going to be going in the right general direction. In fact, you'll never learn faster about a particular industry or a problem space or a user group than you will during a startup weekend. You're going to be doing design thinking, the Google design sprint methodology, you're going to be doing lean startup and even agile software development, you're working as a team. You're going to get really deep into that space, into that problem and into that industry. But I think that would be just as useful if the product idea was slightly tangential to your own personal idea. So if you've got a specific idea for a specific startup that you actually plan on working on in the real world, then have that in mind when you're choosing which team to work on, if there's another team you are attracted to, or if you're going to pitch the idea to attract other people to work on your idea, then maybe don't make it like your baby. Make it just something that's related. So, I mean, overall, all I can say is Startup Weekend Auckland is amazing. The organising crew is really strong. The mentor community in Auckland is actually, for a small city, was really overwhelming. Like the quality of the mentors, there's kind of venture capital investors, there's lawyers, there's designers, there's developers, there's successful entrepreneurs. There's an amazing mix of mentors, so really, really interesting people. So that was actually quite full on. It was a tiny bit intimidating, to be honest, because they're A-game people, but it was really fun, really intense. So mentors are high quality, the participants are high quality. They're really interesting, kind of quirky backgrounds. Some are already in the startup scene, some are working in corporate jobs, want to just try it out. Some younger people. There's a really interesting mix of participants. The crew that actually organizes the whole thing and is kind of behind it is amazing. And to be fair, that's true of most of the startup weekends around the world. It's actually a pretty high quality event. And a lot of the hackathons, people get into this because they care about entrepreneurship, they care about building the community. So it tends to attract good quality people, and it tends to therefore make for a good event. So I can't recommend it highly enough. No matter what industry you're in, no matter what role you're in, no matter where you are in your career, spending a weekend, it's a long weekend, it's exhausting, but there is almost no better way to learn quickly about the startup scene and how to build a startup than to do a startup weekend. It's amazing. Have a good one.